Welcome to the
Welcome
world
to
of
the
sci-fi
Sci-Fi
stories,
story.
and don't forget
Here
to
you
like,
find the best
subscribe,
HFY
and share
story
the
written
channel.
by human.
Enjoy the
Listen
listening.
this story. If
A
you like
forgotten
it,
human
subscribe
war
to
fleet
channel.
awakens after a million years. The galaxy trembles. The awakening in the vastness of space, where stars glimmer like scattered diamonds, there was a forgotten region of the galaxy hidden deep in the darkness. Far from the busy trade routes and known civilizations, a strange ancient signal flickered to life. It wasn't the usual static noise that space probes picked up. This signal was different. It was organized, intentional, a message from the past, a small crew aboard a deep space probe. The Horizon was the first to detect the signal. The team consisted of 3 seasoned explorers: Captain Elena Garcia, her second-in-command Lieutenant Mark Holt, and the technician James Langley. They had traveled across the galaxy in search of undiscovered secrets, but nothing could have prepared them for what they were about to find. The signal was weak, but clear enough to be traced to a nearby nebula. Captain Garcia leaned forward in her seat, staring at the glowing readout in disbelief. "This can't be right," she muttered. "This signal is coming from the core nebula. That's a graveyard. Nothing should be out there." Lieutenant Holt looked over her shoulder, his eyes narrowing. "It's been centuries since anyone even dared to venture near that region. They say it's where entire fleets were lost, swallowed up by time and space." James Langley, his face illuminated by the soft glow of the control panel, frowned. "I've been running scans for years. I've never picked up anything like this before. The signal is human." The word echoed in the silence of the cockpit. The 3 of them exchanged puzzled glances. Humanity had been scattered across the galaxy for millennia, its once thriving empire slowly crumbling after wars and betrayals. Most of its fleets had disappeared, and what remained were only memories, tales whispered by the few who still held on to the past. But this signal was different. It was undeniable. A human fleet lost to history was calling out from the edge of time. "Get us closer," Captain Garcia ordered. Her voice was calm, but her mind was racing. There was something in her gut telling her this discovery would change everything. The probe's engines hummed to life as they made their way toward the source of the signal. The nebula was a ghostly sight, its swirling clouds of gas and dust casting an eerie glow. The deeper they traveled, the more oppressive the silence became. There were no other ships, no nearby planets, only the distant stars. It felt as though the universe itself had forgotten this place. As they approached the signal source, something caught their eye, a shadow in the distance. It was enormous, stretching across the dark void like a sleeping jet. At first, they thought it was an asteroid or a derrick ship, but the closer they got, the more they realized this was something far different. This was a fleet of warships, each one massive and ancient, their hulls scarred by the passage of time, yet somehow still intact. Langley gasped as the ship sensors locked onto the fleet. "Captain, these ships, they're human. These are human designs, but they're centuries old." Captain Garcia felt a chill run down her spine. The ships were unlike anything she had ever seen before, cracked, worn, and long abandoned, but there was no mistaking it. The markings on the ship's hulls, the designs that matched old records from humanity's early days in space, confirmed it. These ships had been built by humans, but they had been lost to time. How is this possible? Garcia asked, more to herself than to her crew. "These ships should have been destroyed long ago. What happened to them?" Lieutenant Holt scrolled through the data on his console. "There's no record of them. It's like they disappeared from history. It's as if they were erased from every database, every archive, like someone wanted them to be forgotten." As they moved closer, a strange phenomenon occurred. The low hum filled the air, barely audible at first, but growing louder with each passing second. The sound seemed to come from the very ships themselves. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. What was happening? Were these ships still operational? How could they be emitting energy after all these years? Suddenly, the dark, silent void of space was pierced by a bright flash of light. It came from the center of the fleet, where a massive ship far larger than the others seemed to come to life. Its engines roared to life, glowing with a faint, otherworldly light. The probe's instruments went wild as the ship's systems powered up. "Captain, something's happening," Langley exclaimed, his hands Flying over the console, they're activating this fleet, is waking up. The realization hit them all at once. This was no ordinary fleet. It had been hidden for thousands of years, but it had never truly died. It had been waiting for the right moment to awaken, to return. Captain Garcia's voice was filled with awe and trepidation. We need to find out who's controlling this fleet and why it's still here. We've just uncovered something that could change the course of history. The signal had led them to something far more significant than a forgotten relic of the past. It was the beginning of a new chapter in humanity's story. But questions remained. Who had left this fleet behind? Why had it been hidden for so long? And most importantly, who or what was now controlling it? The crew of the Horizon could only wonder as they prepared to embark on a journey that would take them deeper into the mystery of the lost human battle fleet. The answers they sought could lead to unimaginable discoveries or unimaginable danger. Echoes of the past. The crew of the Horizon could hardly believe what they were witnessing. The massive fleet, dormant for millennia, was slowly coming to life before their eyes. Engines hummed with a faint glow, weapon systems powered up, and the ship's once blank holes now flickered with ancient symbols and codes. It was as if the fleet had been frozen in time and had now been awakened by some unseen hand. Captain Gara's mind raced. We need to get closer, she said, her voice steady though inside she was overwhelmed by the discovery. There's something here, something we don't understand. Let's take the ship closer, but carefully. We don't know what we're dealing with. Lieutenant Hole nodded. I'll adjust our course to keep us out of the ship's direct paths. But this is incredible, Captain. What are the chances that something like this was left behind? As the Horizon glided silently toward the fleet, the crew could see more clearly the enormous scale of the ships. Each one was a relic of an ancient war, a time when humanity's empire had stretched across the stars, commanding fleets of ships that were said to be unbeatable. Yet now these once mighty vessels lay in ruin, waiting for something to awaken them. James Langley, the technician, studied the ship systems, his fingers dancing over the console. Captain, on getting strange readings. There's a power source. It's faint, but it's there. It seems to be coming from the largest ship, the one in the center of the fleet. That's where we need to go, Garcia said firmly. If there's any hope of understanding what happened here, we need to investigate that ship. As they neared the massive vessel, the hum of its engines grew louder, vibrating through the hull of the Horizon. It was clear now that the ship was not just reactivating, it was awakening from a long slumbering state, and something or someone was in control. Suddenly, a burst of static crackled over their communication system, followed by a voice. It was distorted, old, and fragmented, but unmistakably human. This is Commander Eric. I repeat, any survivors? The fleet is awaiting your command. The crew's eyes widened. A human voice from so long ago. Rewind that, Garcia ordered. Play it again. Langley complied, his fingers moving quickly over the controls. The voice came through again. Though still broken, the fleet is waiting, awaiting your command. Humanity's final hope. What is this? Holt whispered, unable to hide the awe in his voice. Are we hearing a message from someone who was aboard this fleet? Keogh's heart raced. That's not just any message, it's a distress call from centuries ago. She paused, trying to piece everything together. But why was it left behind? And why is it only now activating? Suddenly another signal pinged across their systems. This time it was a stream of data, a series of coordinates encrypted with a code that no one in the galaxy had used in centuries. It was a location, a destination, one that could only mean one thing. The fleet had a mission, and that mission had never been completed. Langley's eyes flickered as he decoded the message. It's a battle plan, a final mission. Maybe it looks like these ships were supposed to go somewhere important. Where? Garcia asked, her voice tight with anticipation. He scanned the data again, his brow furrowing. It's a distant sector, very far from here, beyond the outer rim. It's almost like the fleet was heading toward an enemy base, an enemy they couldn't defeat. A final stand. Gara's mind was spinning. The fleet had been waiting for something, a signal, a command. But from who and for what purpose? Prepare for immediate departure, Garcia commanded, turning to her crew. We're going to follow this trail. If this fleet was part of humanity's last war, we need to know what happened. We need to understand who they were fighting and why this fleet was hidden. As the horizon set course for the coordinates, the crew felt a strange mix of excitement and dread. They were about to uncover the secrets of a long-forgotten battle, a battle that might reveal the true fate of humanity's once great empire. But as they moved closer to the unknown destination, Garcia couldn't shake the feeling that they were not just uncovering history. They were about to awaken something that had been dormant for far too long, something that might not welcome their presence. The fleets echoed in the silence of space, and the crew of the Horizon braced themselves for what lay ahead. Whatever they found at the end of this journey, they knew it would change everything. The echoes of the past were reaching out to them, and they had no choice but to answer the first encounter. The journey toward the coordinates was long, the silence of space, broken only by the hum of the Horizon's engines. The crew was tense, their minds focused on the unknown ahead. Each member of the team felt the weight of what they were about to discover. For centuries, humanity had been scattered, its once proud empire broken into fragments, yet here they were on the verge of uncovering a piece of that lost history, a fleet that had been left behind, hidden away for reasons unknown. Captain Garcia stood by the window, gazing out into the endless void. The stars seemed to blur as they pushed deeper into the galaxy, closer to the coordinates. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were heading towards something that could change everything. But what would they find? A long-lost human fleet, or something far darker? Something humanity was never meant to uncover. Captain, we're approaching the location. Langley's voice interrupted her thoughts. He had been monitoring the ship's systems, watching as the coordinates drew nearer on the map. Understood. Everyone prepare for any surprises, Garcia replied, her voice firm yet uncertain. We don't know what we're walking into. As they entered the sector marked on the fleet's last known course, the silence became deafening. The stars around them dimmed as they approached a dark patch of space, an area that seemed to absorb light. It was as if something had been hidden here, something so powerful had bent the very fabric of space around it. Then, without warning, the comm system crackled to life again. This time the voice was clear. It was human. But it wasn't one of their own crew members. It was something different. Welcome, Captain Garcia. I've been waiting for you, the voice said. The word sent chills down her spine. It was calm, confident, almost as if it had known they were coming. The voice was neither old nor young, but carried the weight of time, of experience, and something more. Who art you? Go, Garcia asked, her voice steady, but her pulse quickening. The crew exchanged nervous glances. The voice was familiar yet alien. Who was it? You may call me Captain Elis, the voice responded. I am the commander of the fleet you have awakened. It is good to finally make contact with someone. Langley's fingers flew over his console, trying to track the source of the signal. Captain UNG, getting multiple readings from all over the fleet. There's power coming online, but no sign of life aboard the ships. It's like the fleet itself is operating independently. Garcia narrowed her eyes. Captain Elis, are you the one controlling these ships? There was a pause, a moment of silence that felt like an eternity. Then the voice returned, its tone colder now. Not exactly. I once commanded this fleet, but I am no longer the one in control. We are all bound to this fate, this mission. You have awoken us, and now it is time for you to understand why we were left behind. The message was cryptic, but the meaning was clear. Whoever or whatever was speaking had a purpose, and that purpose was tied to the fleet's long-forgotten mission. Captain Elis, where are you? Garcia asked, trying to keep her composure. Why are we hearing your voice? What is this fleet's purpose? I was left behind, Elis replied, his voice filled with an eerie calm. My crew, my fleet, we were all abandoned, but the mission remained. And now you have awakened us. You must decide what to do with us. Suddenly, a new signal came through. An image appeared on the communication screen. It was a figure, tall and imposing, wearing ancient battle armor, his face partially obscured by a helmet. He stood on the bridge of one of the masset ships. The figure's eyes glowed faintly, and his presence radiated a sense of command. You've met the fleet, Captain Elias said, his voice now tinged with a mix of pride and sadness. I am not the only one who remains. My crew, the warriors of humanity's last fleet, still live within the ships. They too have been waiting for you, for someone to lead them back into the fight, to finish what we started. The crew of the Horizon watched in stunned silence. The figure on the screen was not just a commander, he was part of something much greater. The fleet was not just a collection of warships, it was alive in a way that defied everything they knew about technology and life. "Are you saying these ships are alive?" Garcia asked, struggling to grasp what she was hearing. "Alive in a sense," Elias replied. "The ships have adapted, they have their own intelligence. Now their own will. They were designed to be humanity's last hope. And now that hope has been reignited." Captain Garcia took a deep breath. She had heard tales of ancient technologies, of battles long past, but nothing could have prepared her for the truth. The fleet had not just been lost, it had been waiting, and now they were part of something much bigger than they had ever imagined. "We have to know more," Garcia said, her voice filled with determination. "Take us closer to that flagship. I need to see it with my own eyes. We need answers." As the horizon moved forward, drawing closer to the massive flagship at the center of the fleet, the crew felt a sense of awe and fear. They were about to meet the ones who had been waiting, the ones who had never given up on their mission. And in that moment, the true scope of their discovery began to unfold. The fate of humanity's last battle fleet and the secrets it held was now in their hands. The return of the fleet. As the horizon moved closer to the massive flagship at the center of the fleet, the crew felt the weight of what they were about to uncover. The ships, once dormant for centuries, were now alive with energy and purpose. The hum of their engines was growing louder, and the sheer size of the vessels filled the viewport, casting long shadows over the ship. This was no ordinary fleet. It was something much older, much more advanced, and it was ready for war. Captain Garcia stood at the helm, her eyes fixed on the flagship. The figure of Captain Elias had disappeared from the communication screen, but his words echoed in her mind. "We were abandoned, but the mission remains." What mission? And why had this fleet been hidden away for so long? "Captain, we're almost within range of the flagship," Langley called out from his station. "I'm picking up more signals from the ship. They're starting to broadcast. It's like they're sending us an invitation." "An invitation?" Garcia frowned. "To what?" "To join them," Langley replied. "To activate the fleet. They're waiting for us to give the order." Gara's mind raced. She had always known the fleet was important, but she had no idea just how significant their discovery was. This wasn't just about finding a lost piece of humanity's history. It was about reawakening something that had been buried for Yan, and it was waiting for her command. "Prepared to dock with the flagship," Garcia ordered, her voice steady, but her thoughts running wild. "Let's see what we're dealing with." The crew made their way toward the docking bay, tension thick in the air. The closer they got to the flagship, the more powerful its presence felt. It was like a sleeping giant that had just begun to stir, its power rising with each passing second. The fleet was coming back to life, and they were the ones who had triggered it. As the horizon docked with the flagship, the crew felt the unmistakable jolt of the connection. The massive doors of the docking bay slid open, revealing the interior of the flagship. It was far larger than any ship they had ever seen. Its corridor is wide and empty, yet strangely alive. The air felt thick, charged with energy. It was as though the ship itself was waiting for them. "Stay alert," Garcia said, her voice low. "We don't know what we're walking into." The crew moved cautiously down the corridors, their footsteps echoing in the silence. The interior of the ship was a mix of advanced technology and ancient design, worn but sturdy, its systems still functional. Despite the years of disuse, the walls were lined with old symbols, markings that had been etched into the metal long ago. There was a sense of history here, but also a sense of something more, something that hadn't been fully understood until now. They reached a central command room where the bulk of the ship's operations seemed to be controlled, and there, standing at the center of the room, was Captain Elias, his figure tall and imposing just as it had appeared on the communication screen. But this time there was something different about him. His armor was no longer a distant memory. It was real, ancient, and alive with power. He was a symbol of the fleet's past, but also its future. "Welcome," Elias said, his voice echoing in the chamber. "You are the ones who have awakened us. The fleet has been waiting for you, Captain Garcia. The mission is yours to lead." Garcia stepped forward, her eyes scanning the room. "What is this mission? What happened to humanity? Where did everyone go?" Elias paused, as though considering how to answer. "The fleet was built for a purpose: to protect humanity, to ensure our survival. But something went wrong. A faction within humanity turned against us. They sabotaged our fleet, left us to die in the void of space. The mission was meant to be a last-ditch effort to restore what was lost, to finish the war. We could not win. A cold silence fell over the room. The crew of the Horizon exchanged uneasy glances. What Elias was saying was more than just a story. It was the truth of humanity's fall, of the betrayal that had shattered their empire. Who betrayed you? Garcia asked, her voice barely a whisper. Elias' eyes glowed faintly behind his helmet. It was the ones who fear our power. They believed the humanity's time had passed. They believed that the only way to survive was to abandon the old ways, to let go of the past. And so they destroyed us. They scattered us to the winds, but we never gave up. We waited, we watched, and now the time has come to finish what we started. Garcia took a deep breath. She could feel the weight of what Elias was saying. The fleet had been a symbol of humanity's strength, but it had been betrayed by its own people. Now it was her responsibility to decide what came next. What happens now? Garcia asked, her voice firm. The fleet is ready, Elias replied. We are prepared to return to the fight. We are prepared to reclaim what was lost. But we need a leader. We need someone to command us, someone who will guide us into the future. The crew of the Horizon stood in silence, the gravity of the situation sinking in. They had stumbled upon a secret that had been hidden for centuries. The fate of humanity's last fleet was now in their hands, and as the massive ships powered up around them, Captain Garcia knew that their journey had only just begun. They were no longer just explorers. They were part of something far greater, a battle that had started long before they were born, and one that would continue with them as its new leaders. The fleet was ready to rise again, and the fate of humanity's future was about to unfold. The hidden betrayal. As the crew of the Horizon stood before Captain Elias and the now activated fleet, the weight of their discovery settled in like an unshakable cloud. The fleet, once thought to be lost, was awakening, and its mission was clear: to reclaim humanity's lost glory and restore their place in the galaxy. But Captain Elias's words had hinted at something far darker, something that had shaped the fate of this mighty fleet, leaving it abandoned for centuries. Captain Elias, Garcia began, her voice steady but filled with curiosity. You've mentioned a faction within humanity that betrayed you. Who were they? Why did they destroy everything we once fought for? Elias's armored figure remained still, the faint hum of the ship systems filling the silence. The other crew members exchanged uneasy glances. This was the part of the story that had been hidden, the part that might hold the key to understanding why the fleet had been left to rot in the far reaches of the galaxy. Elias took a slow, deliberate step forward, his voice colder than before. The betrayal was not just from one group. It came from within our own ranks. In the final days of the war, as the galaxy burned and our enemies closed in, a small faction of the highest-ranking officers turned against us. They believed the humanity survival lay not in your, but in abandoning the old ways, abandoning the war and those who fought to win it. The word struck Garcia like a cold slap. Are you saying that a group of humanity's own leaders deliberately sabotaged the fleet, left their own people to die? Elias nodded slowly, his expression unreadable beneath his helmet. Yes, they believed that in order to survive, humanity needed to adapt by leaving the past behind. The fleet and everything it stood for was a symbol of that past. They destroyed our supply lines, crippled our communication networks, and severed us from our allies. The goal was simple: if the fleet fell, so would the war, and they could start a new civilization without the old warriors, without the old ways, a civilization that would never rise again. Langley, who had been quietly monitoring the fleet systems, spoke up, his voice filled with disbelief. But why not just abandon the fleet and move on? Why sabotage it? Why leave it out here, and dormant for centuries? Elias's gaze turned toward Langley, his voice heavy with regret. They knew that if the fleet survived, it would continue the fight. It would never stop. The fleet was designed to fight until the last ship fell, to never surrender, and that was something they couldn't allow, so they made sure we were erased from history. Captain Garcia felt a deep sense of anger building inside her. Saw they erased the fleet, left it for dead, and then moved on, as if nothing had happened. Elias's voice was low and tinged with bitterness. Yes, they erased The records erased the memories. They made sure that no one would know what happened. They buried the truth. And for centuries, no one has remembered the sacrifices we made. No one has remembered humanity's last stand. The silence in the room was thick with the weight of Elias's words. Garcia was torn between disbelief and fury. To think that humanity's own leaders had betrayed them in such a way, it was incomprehensible. But there was no denying the truth in Elias's voice. The fleet had been left to die, and now with its power restored, it was ready to rise again. But to what end? So now what? Garcia asked, her voice a mixture of resolve and frustration. What are we supposed to do? Reclaim the past, start a new war to finish what was started centuries ago. Elias's gaze softened for a moment. The choice is yours, Captain. You've awakened the fleet. You've reactivated humanity's last hope. The mission was always to reclaim what was lost and finish the fight. But it's not just about revenge. It's about remembering who we were and what we stood for. It's about protecting humanity's future. Captain Garcia took a long, hard look at the fleet around her. The ships, once forgotten, now hummed with life, their massive hulls alive with energy. It was a symbol of humanity's strength, resilience, and determination. But the betrayal, the lies that had been buried in time, left a bitter taste in her mouth. We're not just here to fight the past, Garcia said, her voice firm with newfound conviction. We're here to reclaim humanity's future. We'll finish what was started, but we'll do it our way. No more secrets, no more betrayal. We rebuild from the ashes, not just for ourselves, but for everyone who believes in the future. Elias's voice resonated with quiet approval. Then we will fight, Captain Garcia. We will fight for humanity's future together. As the crew of the Horizon stood before the massive fleet, they stood the weight of their responsibility. The battle ahead would not be just for survival. It would be a fight to restore humanity's honor and ensure that the mistakes of the past would never happen again. The fleet had been awakened, but now its true purpose had to be defined, and that would fall to the crew of the Horizon to lead the next chapter of humanity's story was about to begin, and it was up to them to ensure it ended on their terms. A fleet ready for war. The command room buzzed with activity as the crew of the Horizon prepared to lead humanity's last battle. Fleet into the unknown. Captain Garcia stood at the center of the command deck, watching as the fleet's ships hummed with life around them. The fleet, once a symbol of humanity's power, was now awakening in its entirety. Every ship, from the smallest scout to the towering dreadnoughts, was coming online and readying for combat. The energy in the room was palpable. The crew was ready to embark on a mission that could either save humanity's future or end it. Captain Elias stood beside her, his gaze fixed on the holographic map of the galaxy. The map was filled with flashing red markers, signifying enemy strongholds, points of conflict, and places of interest from the ancient war. The new mission was clear. They were to move against the remnants of the faction that had betrayed them, the ones responsible for humanity's near extinction. Their enemies had retreated to a far-off sector hidden deep within uncharted space. We've waited centuries for this moment, Elias said, his voice low but full of resolve. The fleet is ready, the warriors are ready, but it will not be easy. The enemies we face are strong. We may be the last remnants of humanity's glory, but we are not invincible. Garcia met Elias's gate. We've got one shot at this. We either reclaim what was lost or we fall trying. No more mistakes. The crew could feel the weight of her words. They had seen the damage the betrayal had caused. Entire fleets had been wiped out, and entire worlds had been forgotten. The ones who had betrayed them had gone into hiding, burying themselves in the farthest reaches of the galaxy. But the fleet was about to bring them to light, and Captain Garcia was ready to lead the charge. Prepare the fleet for war. Jump, Garcia ordered, her voice cutting through the tension. We leave in 5 minutes. We can't waste any more time. Langley was already at his station, his fingers flying over the controls. Everything is aligned, Captain. The fleet is ready for warp. We'll be able to reach their sector in under 2 days, but once we're there, we'll be in their territory. It won't be easy. Nothing worth doing ever is, Garcia replied, her eyes narrowing. We've got the element of surprise. They won't expect us to come from this direction. The tension in the command room grew as the final Preparations were made, the crew worked swiftly, their movements coordinated and efficient. They had become a well-oiled machine driven by a singular purpose: to reclaim humanity's rightful place in the galaxy. As the final countdown began, Garcia felt a rush of adrenaline. This was the moment they had been waiting for. The fleet was ready, and they had one chance to get this right. Jumping in 5, 4, 3, Langley's voice counted down. Captain Garcia took a deep breath. "Let's do this." The space around them warped and twisted as the fleet jumped into faster-than-light travel, streaking across the stars at unimaginable speed. The engines of the horizon hummed in sync with the fleet, the ships moving as one entity, a massive wave of destruction set to crash upon their enemies. 2 days later, the fleet arrived at the outer edge of enemy territory, a dark and hostile sector of space. The stars here were dimmer, the shadows deeper. It was a place where civilizations were forgotten, where entire species had been driven to extinction, and it was here that their enemies had taken refuge. The fleet dropped out of warp, and the vastness of the enemy stronghold came into view. A massive orbital station loomed in the distance, surrounded by smaller ships and satellites too many to count. This was their enemy's heart, the place where they had been hiding for centuries. And it was here that Captain Garcia would lead the fleet into battle. "All ships hold position," Garcia commanded. "Prepare for assault. We'll take them by surprise." No more waiting. Elias's voice came through the comms, calm but full of authority. "The fleet is yours, Captain. Lead us to victory." The ships of the fleet moved as one, their engines roaring to life, their weapon systems primed and ready. The enemy would not know what hit them. The first wave of fire came from the enemy station, and within moments the darkness of space was illuminated by flashes of light and the roar of energy weapons. But the fleet had prepared for this. The ships of the horizon were maneuvering with precise coordination, a far cry from the disorganized forces they had faced before. They were human survivors, and this time they would not be caught off guard. Garcia watched the battle unfold. Before her eyes, the enemy ships were formidable, but they were no match for the might of the fleet. Every ship in their arsenal had been built for one purpose: to fight until the last one fell. And they fought with the fierce determination of those who had been abandoned, but never broken. "Captain, we've got their flagship locked in," Langley called out, his voice tense with excitement. "We can take it out now." Garcia glanced at the tactical map, her mind working quickly. "All ships focus fire on the flagship. Take it down. That's the heart of their fleet." The fleet unleashed everything they had. Beams of energy and missiles rained down on the enemy flagship, overwhelming its defenses. The massive ship fought back, but it was clear it was outmatched. The tide of the battle had shifted, and there was no turning back. Within moments, the flagship exploded in a brilliant burst of light. The enemy fleet faltered, their lines breaking as their morale crumbled. The rest of the enemy ships were soon overwhelmed, retreating or being destroyed in the wake of the human fleet's fury. And as the last enemy ship fell, Captain Garcia exhaled slowly, her heart pounding. They had done it. They had reclaimed humanity's place in the galaxy. The betrayal of the past had been avenged, and humanity's future was now in their hands. But even as the fleet celebrated their victory, Garcia knew this was only the beginning. The war had been won, but the battle for humanity's future had only just begun. Now it was time to rebuild, to ensure that the mistakes of the past were never repeated. "Again, victory is ours," Garcia said, her voice steady but full of determination. "But we still have a long way to go. The galaxy is ours to rebuild, and we will do it together. Let's make sure humanity never forgets the price of survival." The fleet stood poised, ready for whatever came next. The future of humanity had been reclaimed, and the fleet's mission had only just begun. The battle was over, but the war for a new era had just begun. The final battle, the war was over, but the echoes of it still reverberated through the fleet. The enemy had been defeated, their strongholds shattered, and their ships scattered across the void of space. The battle had been brutal, but it had been necessary. Humanity's last fleet had fought with everything they had, and in the end they had won. Now Captain Garcia stood on the bridge of the horizon, looking out at the aftermath of the conflict. The enemy's defeat was a victory, but it wasn't enough. "Not yet. We've won the battle," Garcia said, her voice firm but tired. "But we still have a galaxy to rebuild. The future of humanity depends on what we do next." Her words rang out across the bridge, resonating with the crew. The fleet had been reborn. And now it had a purpose, no longer just a tool of war, but a force for change. The galaxy needed leaders, and it needed unity. The old ways had been destroyed. But the hope for a new beginning remained. Elias stepped forward, his presence commanding attention. You are right, Captain. The battle has been won, but the war for the future is just beginning. Our mission is to ensure humanity's survival, to rebuild what was lost. This fleet is ready to fight, but it is also ready to guide. Garcia nodded, her gaze hardening with resolve. We won't repeat the mistakes of the past. We'll build a future where humanity stands together, not divided, not betrayed. The fleet will not be a weapon of destruction anymore. It will be a beacon of hope. As the fleet continued to float through the remains of the battlefield, Guerra's mind raced. The war may have been won, but the peace that followed would be fragile. They would need to be vigilant. The factions that had betrayed humanity were still out there, hiding in the shadows, waiting for their chance to rise again. But this time, the fleet would be ready. They had learned the harsh lessons of the past, and they would not be caught off guard again. Captain, we've received a transmission from the Outer Rim, Langley called out, breaking Garcia's thoughts. It's from a group of human colonies. They've been monitoring the battle and want to speak with you. Put it through. Garcia ordered. Her curiosity piqued. The holographic screen flickered, and a figure appeared in front of them. It was a middle-aged man, his face lined with years of hardship. His eyes were filled with the same determination that had carried the fleet to victory. Captain Garcia, the man said, his voice strong. I'm General Anders of the Outer Rim Coalition. We've been watching the battle, and we've heard the stories of the fleet's return. We have allies in the region, but we also have enemies who are trying to take advantage of the chaos. Garcia's expression hardened. We've already dealt with betrayal once. We won't stand by and let anyone else destroy humanity's future. What's happening in the Outer Rim? Anders' face grew somber. There are groups out here who never accepted the fall of the old empire. They've been gathering forces, waiting for a chance to strike. They saw your victory as a sign of weakness, a signal that humanity's power has been restored. They think they can take advantage of it. We won't let that happen, Garcia said, her voice resolute. I'll take the fleet to the Outer Rim. We'll clear out any threats and bring unity to the galaxy. Elias stepped forward, his voice deep with conviction. We fought for humanity's future, Captain. We'll fight for it again. Wherever it's needed, the fleet stands with you. Garcia felt a sense of pride swell in her chest. This wasn't just about military might anymore. It was about something bigger, a chance to rebuild, to ensure humanity had a future. They had survived the fall, and now they had to guide the galaxy toward a new beginning. The final battle had been won, but there was still much to do. As the fleet prepared to head to the Outer Rim, the crew knew the fight for the galaxy's future was far from over. But they had something they hadn't had before, a unified purpose, a common goal. The fleet moved forward, its ships gliding through the stars. As one, the crew had proven that humanity could survive, even in the face of betrayal, and now they would ensure that the mistakes of the past would never be repeated. The fleet was not just a weapon, it was a symbol of hope as the horizon and its fleet headed toward the Outer Rim. Captain Garcia knew the road ahead would be difficult. There would be more battles, more enemies to face, but they would face them together as a united force. Humanity's future was now in their hands, and they would fight to protect it for themselves, for their children, and for the generations to come. The final battle had been won, but the true war for humanity's future had just begun, and they were ready for it.